Hey everybody, welcome to the Happy Harvest Homestead. Today is going to be a day full of hard decisions, and I'm not really looking forward to it. Now that we have a whole bunch of baby kits who haven't died so far and seem like they won't die, I now have a whole bunch of potential future rabbit breeders, so I'm no longer stuck with holding on to every single rabbit I can get my hands on, because we keep having rabbits dying for various reasons, and we don't have any kits being born to replace them with. So that's good news for me, that the terrible situation is now over. That's not good news, though, for all the rabbits who are not very good and are now going to be culled. Let's talk about who is going to be butchered today and why they're going to be butchered. Alright, so the first rabbit who needs to go is Zsholtie. She is a 2-year-old French Angora doe who was born and raised on our farm. We kept her as a breeder because she was the only rabbit in her litter who didn't get sick from the pastorella epidemic we had a couple years ago. So we wanted to keep that hardy genetic that she could hopefully pass to her babies. One of the reasons I'm okay culling Jolti. Her fiber quality isn't even that good. I kept her for her hardy immune system and not for her fur quality. Same thing with her temperament. She very much dislikes being handled in any way, and when you're struggling to keep all of her long hair clean and free from dirt and debris, it's much easier with a rabbit who likes to be handled. She also is a terrible mom, and if all these reasons aren't enough for me to cull her, she also has this weird thing going on with her vent. Let me show you in more detail. Come here, sweetness. I need to show the people. Look, come here. I need to show you. Come on. Wrong. It's hard to show you with one hand because I'm holding her, but it looks really weird. Okay, you can go now. Thank you. So I have no idea what caused this, or if it's going to go away by itself. I'm sure it's pretty painful, but this is just another nail in Zsholtie's coffin, and at this point, I have no further use for her, and she would not be good to sell to anybody else because she has so many problems. So the best thing to do for her is to end her good life and send her to rabbit heaven instead of dragging out her useless existence for longer. So she is definitely number one on my culling list. Next on my culling list is the 1.5-year-old, very small chestnut doe, Cattail. In addition to the huge con of being a very tiny meat rabbit breeder, who will produce very tiny, non-meaty babies, Cattail has also proven herself to be a bad mom. She's had some trouble getting bred, and her first litter died of starvation, and her more recent second litter she did not defend properly in a colony, and our very bossy herd Queen Constance went in the nest box and ate some of them, and the remaining kits got too cold and died because there were too few babies to snuggle together and provide body heat to keep warm. I must admit that her second litter failing isn't entirely her fault, but she definitely could have done better, and the fact that she's only had 2 litters and she's a year and a half old is also kind of concerning, and that's just ignoring the huge problem of her size. So kind of like Zsholtie, I've been holding on to her for so long just because she's like an alive, breathing rabbit who could possibly have babies sometime, who might live, and then we can finally have some rabbits to butcher again. But obviously, she's not very good at doing that. And now that we have better options, I feel more free to allow her to go to bunny heaven as well. So that is 2 rabbits we have to butcher today. Then I've been struggling with this third one for a while. In addition to just my own mental flip-flopping, I've also on camera flip-flopped a lot, which is saying something. But it's really hard for me to let this smaller white buck go. I don't actually know which one is the smaller one of them, so before I start butchering, I'm going to have to weigh both of them, and whoever's smaller will be butchered. In every way except for size, these 4-month-old purebred white New Zealand little bucks are identical. They're both healthy, they both have good body structure. The only way I can tell them apart is by weighing them. Eventually, whoever wins this scale battle is going to be our main breeding buck, so that's quite the prize. And obviously, my main meat rabbit breeding buck should be super meaty and muscly and big. And honestly, I've been holding on to so many bucks for so long. For the same reason, I've been holding on to all the does, because we didn't have any babies we could replace anyone with. But now that we have babies, if for some reason all of my bucks die, I have plenty of little bucks I can replace them with. And obviously, of course, I can always buy rabbits to replace dead breeders, but that's always hard because you have to find someone, and you have to quarantine them, and then they could be sick, and you don't know how hardy they are, and you don't know if they'll do good on your weird rabbit diet, and then you have to pay for them. It's so much easier to keep kits from proven stock who you know is hardy and you know does well on the diet you feed them, and they're free. So I've been wrestling inside myself if I should keep both white bucks or if I should only keep one. Technically, we only need 2 bucks, one main breeder, and a backup. And ideally, the main breeder is going to be the bigger white bunny, and then the backup is going to be Sterling. So I thought maybe I'd butcher him, but then maybe I wouldn't. But then we had that weird chunk of time where I thought a whole bunch of our bucks were going sterile, so I was just keeping all the bucks I could, because if one wasn't sterile, then I wanted to make sure I didn't kill him on accident, like I kind of did to Onyx. It ended up. But now that I know that none of our bucks are permanently sterile, and they were just taking longer to start breeding after their summer break, I feel pretty good about butchering our extra little buckling. So those are the 3 for sure butcherings we're going to do today. I've talked before about how hard it is to film a project and get that project done in a timely manner. Filming just takes twice as long, if not longer, than just putting the camera down and doing something by yourself. So, like some other times, this butchering session, I just took our picture camera and snapped a few photos instead of documenting the whole thing, and especially having guts all over your hands and all that nasty raw meat all over your hands, you don't really want to be touching your camera all that much. So I just took some quick pictures. I made sure to get a lot of good photos of the weighing process of the 2 white bunnies. The first boy I grabbed was just over 6 pounds, which to me is crazy. These guys are just 4 months old, and for at least half of their life, if not more, they have been eating only hay and the occasional bit of fruit or vegetable. Usually when you're breeding for only meat and that's all you care about, you feed your baby bunnies as much, especially manufactured pellets, as you can. They're made to make rabbits grow very quick. They have lots of protein and grains and other additives. But as you know, we choose not to feed pellets. And in our experience, it takes our little baby rabbits longer to grow on our natural free diet than it would take if we shoveled a whole bunch of pellets in their faces. And we've weighed the pros and cons of each side and decided we still like feeding the natural diet, even though it takes slower for our babies to grow. So we're used to having kits be 3 or 4 pounds at 3 or 4 months. So having them almost double that at 6 is just amazingly crazy, because they're on the same diet. So genetics, guys, genetics really plays a part in all of this. From my understanding, these white bunnies have been bred the usual way to grow fast and be fed lots of pellets and be butchered fast. They're New Zealand's, so that's their purpose. They're not a heritage breed or anything. And on our rabbitry, we're focusing more on mothering ability and hardiness first, because you can't have big meat rabbits if their moms don't feed them or they get sick and die. So eventually we want to get to the point where we have a whole bunch of hugely fast-growing babies, but we're kind of in the order of priority breeding for one thing after another. But if this boy ends up being the bigger of the 2, and he is hardy from sickness and from heat, then having him be our main breeding buck and fathering all of our future kits is gonna be amazing, because then we may get a whole bunch of bigger babies a lot sooner than we would have if we would have relied on a smaller buck who is for sure hardy, like Sterling. So with a very happy heart, I grabbed our second baby and weighed him, and I was surprised he came just under 6 pounds too. He was 5.5 pounds. So that's still pretty good, I'd say. But obviously, 5.5 pounds isn't as good as 6 pounds, especially when they are the exact same age, being fed the exact same food, exactly similar in every other way. So the second buck we weighed was the smaller one who got butchered. Then, like I mentioned before, I didn't want to take my camera out and use it with all my meaty, gross gut hands, so I butchered all 3 of the rabbits, and when I was handling them, I could tell very easily who was who. We have Cattail on the far left. She's very small, especially compared to the middle one, who's Zsholtie. She's an adult rabbit, so she's had the longest time to grow, so she was humongous. And then on the far right is the small white buck, and he had like meat in all the right places. Like Zsholtie, she had more growth on her, obviously, because she was older, but she had more like bone mass to her and like more length of her bones, whereas little Buckling was smaller, obviously, because he was younger, but he had like really good meaty places on the back and the front legs and back legs, which is where ideally all your meat would be. Then the final step of butchering, which is part of showing honor and respect for the animal sacrifice, was I made sure to use every part of the animal. I gathered the blood and poured that on our pasture to enrich our soil and therefore feed future goats and rabbits to continue the cycle of life. I saved all the guts and the feet and tails and head, and all the non-bony things went to the chickens, and all the bone things like the head and feet went to the dogs. And then for the hides, just like Onyx's butchering, I didn't tan them because I already have so many tanned hides downstairs that I haven't done anything with. So instead of going through a lot of work to tan them and just have them sit there, I cut each hide into 3 strips and braided it, and I'm now letting them dry in the sun, so they will eventually be chew toys that our dogs are going to love chewing on over the next couple days and weeks. With all this chicken butchering and now rabbit butchering, we have so many bits for the dogs to eat that I kind of need some things that won't go bad right away that I can just have setting when, like, there's a dry spell when we're not butchering anybody. So that was my thought process and action process of butchering these 3 rabbits. Hopefully you can now see why it was necessary and that I tried my best to be a humane butcherer and fully honor their sacrifice. While I am sad I had to butcher these 3, I am also super glad that I got to, because that means we have so many babies. I know I keep reiterating this, but I am truly so glad to finally have so many successful litters. I mean, 2 is like, compared to what we had before, 2 is so many. So you get to join me in looking forward to eventually butchering a lot of these little babies, and maybe even keeping some of these little babies, some of the best ones, as future breeders. Thanks for watching.